Okay, hi, welcome everybody. Welcome to R&M's webinar. I'm just going to wait a few minutes to see any people turn up. Might have some late arrivals, see people joining us. So we'll just hang on a few minutes before we get going. I'm hoping that some of you out there have been the people who have elected to have a cocktail with us. Some of you may recall back in those heady days pre-COVID, we used to hold a number of events each year when our surveys got, well, when our investor services survey got published. Fiona and I used to travel around to London and Edinburgh, and back in the day we used to take it to Zurich and Boston and New York. But sadly we're now doing this online, but we still wanted everybody to come and join us for a drink where possible. So if you do have your drink that was sent to you, can you see that? I've got mine here. I chose a mojito. I've got my glass with some ice. The instructions say it's supposed to be crushed ice, but I'm afraid I've just got cubed ice. The instructions also say to turn the bottle upside down, not to shake it, just to turn it upside down to mix it. Take the top off, I hope you all will do, and pour it into the glass, which I am doing. For those of you who wish to have theirs a little bit later, that's absolutely fine. I know 4 o'clock is a little bit early for some of us drinking. Open your packet to get the dried fruit out. Put the dried fruit into the glass. And then we will have our glass and cheers to you all. Okay. Let me just first of all introduce you to all the people who are participating today on our panel. First up, for those of you who may already know Fiona, have been in touch with Fiona with our surveys. Fiona, just want to say hello and tell us what you do at R&M.
Hi, so I'm the surveys manager at R&M. So I'm the one coordinating all the responses, and from the bank's perspective, I'm the one that's coordinating all the responses. And I produce some of the graphs that you'll see today. So hopefully they all make sense to you, but if they don't, do feel free to ask us any questions.
Thanks, Fiona. Can I turn now to Rob Lowe at Pictet? Rob.
Good afternoon, Richard. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Head of Business Development at Pictet Asset Services based in London. I'm sure many of us have met new businesses channeled through my team, where we have a coverage office here in the UK with support from our headquarters in Geneva and from our Luxembourg team as well. And you may move on to it, Richard, but if you don't, I have opted for a mojito as well. So cheers to you too.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Next, I would like to introduce Shirish Tiwari from RBC. Shirish, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Afternoon, Richard, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm a director of client coverage at RBC Investor and Treasury Services, based right here in London. My main focus is what we term as asset distributors, which is our wealth manager hosted ACD clients. And as part of client coverage, I focus on anchor and growth of our existing client base, and also support the business development for our organization. Our focus is not just UK, but our clients across continental Europe, and in certain cases, Asia Pac as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirish. Okay, I'd like to now just turn to the survey itself to start giving you some of the results we got there. And I'd just like to, hang on a minute, share my screen, but of course, needless to say, I've got the wrong thing on my screen, so I'm going to have to try and get the right thing up there. Bear with me a second. Right, hopefully you can all see my screen now and the little presentation that I'm doing.
Not yet. Not come up yet, Richard.
Is it not?
Unless
Is it up there now?
No, not for me.
Oh, I don't know why it's not there. So you can't see anything on the screen.
Well, we can see you. Ah, hang on, we're going. We're doing.
Sorry, I
There we
clicked
go.
the wrong thing. Good. Always a technical hitch. I do love that. I can remember some years ago giving a presentation on the survey results to one of the participating banks. We were running through strengths and weaknesses, and it took them 45 minutes to get the room set up for me to actually give the presentation. So I was then able, in the presentation, to go through and point out that actually one of your weaknesses is the fact that you're not very good at technology. So I think that just came to prove the point. All right, so today what we're going to do is just run through a quick overview of the 2021 Investor Services Survey, giving you a little bit of feedback on the successful business contingency plans that have been going on. We've run a number of surveys over the last 14 months or so, just to try and gauge what's been going on, and all the feedback that we've had has been really positive about things that are going on. But obviously it's a long road and we're not near the end of it yet. Then we're going to turn to our panelists and get their views on what's been happening and perhaps what's going to be happening in the future. And as you've already found out, we're joined by Lowe and Shirish Tiwari. One other point, if you have any questions, please do use the Q&A link to type your questions in, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. So the results of the survey, which we're publishing here, show that we had 9 of the major providers being ranked here, with Pictet coming in first place, a slight adjustment between second and third places between HSBC and RBC, followed by Northern, BNY Mellon, JP Morgan, Paribas, State Street and Citi. Overall scores were down a bit, which I think, given the year we just had compared to a year previously where there was no COVID, no business contingency planning, I think it's pretty impressive. It could have been a lot more. It hasn't been. It's been very positive. We also have a table that shows the experts. Now, this tends to be the fund managers who deal with multiple custodians, who give their responses to us, and we have a look at those, because I think it's a very good way of actually measuring when you're dealing with people who have experience of several providers. I think they have a slightly broader perspective than perhaps some of those maybe asset owners like pension funds that are typically only dealing with one provider. So that's one of the tables we get up there. The other one we also do is to look at the top 200 asset managers worldwide based on assets under management and see how they scored. And in that one, we see that HSBC did very positively there, JP Morgan, Northern, State Street, BNY Mellon and Citi down at the bottom. Next off is a little geographic breakout. We just look at the UK marketplace to see who performed well there. Pictet in first place, RBC in second, HSBC in third, Northern, Morgan, Mellon, State Street and Citi. All of these tables I'm going to show you will be available to you next week. We'll be sending out our bulletin with all the details in there, plus a lot more, a lot of client comments, a lot of feedback that we get too. So they'll all be there for people to read if they wish. On mainland Europe, we saw Pictet and RBC in first and second, Northern in third, Mellon, Citi, Morgan and Paribas. North America, very similar breakout there, not to some of the other regions, and the final one being rest of world. So I'm just putting all these up there just to give you a flavour of some of the details we get. There's a huge amount of data that we gather, and just trying to present it in an interesting way. I'm just trying to give you a feel for some of the things that we've got there. There's a lot more detail we can provide. The other 2 tables I'm just going to quickly show you is a breakout between asset types. So we've got asset managers on the first table with a not dissimilar breakout to previous tables, and then asset owners, where we have Pictet at top, HSBC, RBC, Northern, Morgan and Paribas. We've also got, and we do provide, and I'm not going to run through it now because there's a lot of information there, but this just to give you an illustration, alphabetically, I've just taken the first bank that's on there, BNY Mellon, And what we do is to take all the scores from the questions that we have, which run along the x-axis there, and we compare them to what we call the adjusted industry average. So we take their score, whether their overall average score, and adjust the score per question by the difference between their overall average and the industry average. That allows us to show where their strengths and weaknesses lie. So you might be able to see, if your screen is big enough, that starting from the left, the sort of the strengths for BNY Mellon were on settlement and safekeeping, proxy voting, customer-facing technology, network, and regulatory support, whereas their weak areas were on tax reclaims, corporate actions, monthly accounting and valuation reports, elements of service quality, and other stuff. So we've got those tables for all the banks that are there, and it will be in the bulletin if you'd like to see it in greater detail. Finally, I've just picked out one client comment, which was from a UK-based fund manager. I just thought it was quite representative of the industry as a whole. The current climate has given rise to some challenges, but generally the custodian base has continued to give strong support, and there has been no dip in service. That should be applauded, as there is no doubt it's been a taxing year for all involved. However, there is room for improvement for some. He did go on to say which ones, but I've edited that bit out for the moment. With more European taxes on the horizon and the issue of CSDR, the relationship between custodians and managers will be closer than ever, hopefully with the notion of a combined effort. The experience of long relationships cannot be underestimated, especially in these times. I thought that was quite an interesting observation. Okay, so that was my little bit of presentation, and that's probably enough of me talking for a while. Even I get bored of the sound of my own voice occasionally. What I'd like to do now is to come across to Rob Lowe and just get some perspective from the Pictet side as to how things have been going for the last 6 months or so since we last spoke, and just share with us what your experience has been. Rob.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, and the results, I think the quote particularly is interesting because we've all lived through a very similar experience, I think, over the last year or so. Last time we did this, I recall us talking about the first few months and the adjustment of everybody having to work from home and all the rest of it. And I think what's interesting is that we've moved quite quickly beyond that. We've moved into a place where certainly all of us at Pictet, we've tried to be very conscious and aware of what the client's interests are rather than forcing an agenda down our throat. And we had a number of initiatives to the beginning of last year, perhaps the second half of last year, ESG, helping clients with their distribution strategy, etc. So I think some clients have continued on that path, as others have faced different challenges that we've tried to respond to as well. Overall, I think we've met the last 6 months with an ability to be human, and having looked into each other's houses as we're doing right now, or looking at non-office related environments where there's more of a human element to all of this, that I think has been a bit of an eye-opener, and it's something that I think we've all learned from and benefited from. We've also tried to stay quite agile, so digital enhancements are something that's obviously high on the agenda for all of us. If I think about DocuSign and online platforms, a lot of our clients have demanded more in that respect. So that's been something that we fast-tracked and used as initiatives for the last 6 months. And from a personal experience, it's interesting as well. I don't think business momentum has slowed, with everybody adjusting to what has been a very difficult year. But coming into 2021 and looking at the last 6 months specifically, I think there's been an interest in picking up the pace. And I don't know about everybody on the line here today, but it feels like everybody's very busy. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of client demand, a lot of interesting initiatives on the go as well. And if I reflect on a personal experience from closing a couple of mandates last year, one of the interesting things was signing contracts. So I think everybody's adjusted quite quickly, and hopefully that'll continue with DocuSign and various other tools to enable the signing of contracts without being in person to be something that becomes very, very normal. But I know we'll look ahead to the next 6 months, which will change again. But I think the last 6 months for us has been an interesting challenge, one where we've quickly responded to these client requirements as they've changed as well. And it's a team that have been able to do this working remotely or from BCP centres, etc. So hats off to not only my clients and the team at Pictet, but to the wider security services industry as well, who I think have responded admirably.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Rob. I don't know whether other people, you broke up a couple of times, but I think we got 90% of what you said there, unless it was my broadband connection. Given the fact that wind is blowing like a hoolie outside, I'm just hoping that broadband connection doesn't completely disappear before the end of this. Anyway, can I turn now to Shirish and just ask you the same thing, really? What your experience has been recently, and how's it been at RBC?
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Richard. It's been very, very similar to what Rob has just said. Like from a client perspective, like the initial 6 months, obviously it was head down. Let's figure out work from home. How that's going to work. Everybody had an element of it, but going 100% was new for, I think, all of us. And once we kind of come out of it, from a client's perspective, there's all of a sudden there's been demand to be more stable, more reliable. I think I had more requests to provide clarity on our pandemic BCP scenario in the past 12 months than the previous 5 years put together. So there was a lot of focus on that. And what came alongside of that is more requests for transparency. I mean, we've always been a technology-focused bank, but how do we make that information more transparent to our clients? Because the clients' obligations, they're not reducing. Even though they're delegating, the regulator still holds them responsible. So how do we get that information across to them as quickly as possible? And how do we maintain that engagement when you can't see each other face to face? So we kind of have to take a step back on our engagement with our clients in that particular space. The point that Rob mentioned around technology and delivery of information to our clients, like things like DocuSign and all of those elements, we were in a very, very similar boat. Like contracts are always wet ink, and within a few weeks, we all had to change into a online sort of arrangement to continue the business running and growing. So that's something we had to navigate as well. And yeah, I'm very proud to say that even though historically there's been a view that big banks are quite lethargic when it comes to making change, we've kind of remediated that to an extent in the past 12 months. And we just need to kind of leverage off that momentum. And continue to drive that agility that we've shown in the past 12 months. I mean, that's kind of one thing on the side of our clients, where you had to provide additional training in certain places, some new products like credit facilities, lending facilities. We are a bank that has a very strong balance sheet, and we've leveraged off that in the past 12 months to facilitate some products and services for our clients during these challenging times. But the other key element is also your employees, right? I mean, the first 6 months, everybody went in full force. We're going to come across at this, but the employee morale. I mean, we all had different challenges that we faced. Like some people didn't have enough space, others just loneliness. So the employee morale was a big element. Of the challenges came to forefront towards the second half of last year. And we offered like free subscription to Headspace, additional days off, parents who are homeschooling, further holidays for them as well, to kind of focus on that family element and take away some of that strain that work might bring about. You're eating, for certain folks, you're eating, working off the same table. So try to give them a break. But I think Rob, you made a great point of how things have kind of turned around in the last couple of months. And I've experienced exactly the same. There's been, it's not just light at the end of the tunnel. We almost feel like there's been a flurry of activity in the market. There has been a few holidays that have come up, so I feel like all people are about to take holidays with half term just around the corner. So everybody's kind of had a reset, and I think it's a reset for the positive. So I'm hoping things continue on this trajectory, and we continue to show the strength that we have.
Shirish, thank you very much. Appreciate your input. I think it might be a good opportunity just at the moment now to go out to people online and just ask them a question. I've got a poll here which I'd like to get you to answer. It's really just about where you are all working at the moment. And you can just complete it and tell us where you are right now. And I can see the results are popping in, which is good. And if we reckon we've got everybody on there who wants to answer, I think we'll end the polling at this point. We seem to have everybody there. So share the results. Here we go. We can see from that. Can you see that? I don't know what you can see. Can any of my panelists tell me if they can see the results on the screen?
Yep, we've got them on the screen. So do you need the results?
So the results, yeah, we've got the results there. So the 83% of people are at home, and 17% are actually in the office. So that's quite interesting. I think it's not really surprising. Let's put it that way. The other question we've got here, which I think we will also launch, is looking forward, because I think we are at a bit of an interesting stage, depending on which country you're in, obviously, but we're contemplating the return to the office, and it's going to happen some point over the next few months or so. Let's just see if we can ask what your opinion would be. I don't know, I can't find the other poll. Fiona, can you see if you can find the other poll? Because we wanted to just find out what your views were looking forward.
Okay. Oh, so I can stop sharing the results. Here we go. And I'm just about to launch it now. So the question is, what type of hybrid solution would suit you best, assuming that's what's going to happen? How many days would you prefer to work in the office as opposed to being at home? So here's the questions coming up now.
So here we go. We're getting some responses coming in. And I think that's possibly all the results we're going to get at the moment. So I'm just going to end the polling and share the results. Again, can everybody see the results? Fiona, can you see the results?
Yes, I can see the results.
So the mixture that I think, the bulk of people seem to be running somewhere between 2 and 3 days a week is the ideal scenario, working in the office versus at home. It'd be interesting to see what actually is going to be the outcome of all of this. Let me come back, if I may, to Rob, and just, I don't know, there seems to be a lot going on at the moment in terms of where people want to work, and a lot of people saying they want to work from home. And I think there's also, we've seen some organisations saying they want people to come back into the office. And I think also, isn't the role of the office going to change a little bit in terms of what you're going to use it for? More collaborative, less report writing? Rob?
Yeah, it's a good question, Richard. I was surprised to see by the poll that nobody wanted to go back to the office 5 days a week. Maybe I wasn't surprised, I don't know. I think everybody's individual circumstances will dictate that in many ways, but the ability to work from home will be something I don't think that we've lost, long term. I pose a question really whether we're more productive at home, and again, reflecting on some of the personal experiences of some new clients that we've onboarded over the last 12, 18 months, and some of our existing client discussions as well. I would question how that fits, and it's probably a discussion that many people have had over the last year as well, whether this is conducive to really being collaborative when staying at home and working with colleagues, etc. I'm somewhat on the fence. I think some things you can work remotely dependent on your role, but I don't think you can beat being in the office and collaborating with colleagues. That is something I think many people have missed. I've missed that very much so in my professional life, and I'm looking forward to being able to both travel to clients' offices, but also to see stakeholders and colleagues at Pictet as well. So I think the collaboration piece is key, and I think it's also a very different dynamic when you're at home for the ability to work between front and back office as well, or in various different functions across various different employers. So I'd like to see us back in the office soon and being able to collaborate in different dimensions as well, rather than just with immediate colleagues that perhaps can answer a question here and there. And I think that collaboration and being more human fits really with Pictet's DNA as well. So it would work for us to have more staff back in the office and being able to collaborate, just sit in the same room and share ideas. There's something about Zoom fatigue, I think, that everybody will be very much nodding their heads to, that you just can't do that, can you, when you're working from home versus having a whiteboard out and perhaps just sharing ideas face to face. So that human element, I think, will be welcomed as we get back to the office, looking ahead over the next 6 months. And I do hope that some habits stay. Again, thinking about this from a very human perspective, having looked into each other's homes over the last 12 months, if somebody needs to go to the doctor or to the dentist, I don't think there would be an element of suspicion about that anymore. People are more trusted, I think, to be able to deliver in their roles. Then if they have to work a little bit later at home, that's okay. You know, there's now the technology available with which to be able to fulfill that, whether you're in the office or at home as well. So yeah, I do hope that some of these habits stay, and we'll also hopefully be welcoming some new Pictet staff this year as well across the business in the UK and beyond, and it would be a shame not to welcome them face to face. So here's to a gradual return and a safe return to the office, and most importantly, to be able to get in front of some clients and share experiences and be able to deliver solutions like we're all very good at in the coming months as well. Back to you, Rich.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rob. Appreciate it. Some interesting points there. We've had one question come in, which I shall put to the panel in a minute. But first of all, I'd just like to go to Shirish and get your take on this, the whole debate at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you, like, from my personal point of view, I do feel a few days back in the office, and which kind of resonated with the audience on this poll, that 2 to 3 days back in the office is extremely beneficial. I too have missed that collaboration element, and we do have a level of overkill of meetings by WebEx, by Zoom, and all of that, and you do tend to lose focus. You can hear people typing away on email, so decision making can take a bit longer. So having that collaboration, sitting across in the same room, is a great advantage. It's a huge benefit. And then from a client management point of view, from a business development point of view, I mean, that face-to-face interaction, which we've lost over the past or missed to a large extent over the past 12 months, is absolutely critical. So I'm already back in the office a couple days a week. Within RBC, we started sending few employees back into the office over the past few weeks. But once again, it's a scenario that where banks have to be, or employers, period, have to be somewhat pragmatic and flexible around. I mean, we like you mentioned, I mean, there are different levels of lockdown across the world. There are different levels of vaccination drives across the world. I mean, and both Pictet and RBC and some of the folks on this panel are part of global organizations. We can no longer have an enterprise-wide policy. So it has to be segregated. And then further down, you need to be asking each employee, how do they feel comfortable in being back into the office? We've all delivered very, very successfully in the past 12 months, but I'm also conscious that a lot of us have worked longer hours in the past 12 months. So is that a result of like, yeah, we are delivering, but are we taking longer to make that delivery? I'm not really going to answer that, but my own question really. I personally feel that there's a lot of benefit still of being back in the office, but your family commitments are paramount. And if you can manage having that flexibility of being in the office for a few days, or maybe not at all, I mean, that's totally up to the individual. That's great. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah, thanks very much, Shirish. I think some good points there. It is interesting that, well, in that poll we took just now, that there was nobody opting to go back into the office full time. I know I've discussed this with both my kids that work in offices in London, and neither of them seem to be wishing to rush straight back in on a full-time basis, even though they are both working from one-bedroom flats, which I find quite extraordinary, but there we go. Okay, let me just turn to this question that we've got here from Tim Wood, Cooper Wood Associates. Since remote working is a large part of most banks' disaster recovery plans, what changes are they making to their existing plans to ensure that there is a new disaster recovery plan beyond remote working, which is a topic we did cover in our last webinar, but I think it's an ongoing suggestion there. So can we go to perhaps Rob first of all to get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Richard. I don't have a concrete answer really, but I do know that there's a number of discussions internally at Pictet, and it would make sense to retain some of the disaster recovery plans being, individuals working from home where they can. It also questions, I guess, more on an industry basis, what really a DR solution looks like, because it's quite easy to pay a reasonable amount of money for quite a big site with lots of idle computers in it. But in this day and age where everybody is mobile, and a number of individuals, of course, have been set up, quite effectively at home, I think perhaps home becomes the go-to DR site of choice, which is the simplest and probably the cheapest option for many organizations. So I think, again, it's personal preference. It will be preference based on the organization's ability to be able to support individuals from home over the longer term as well, but more perhaps a question for the industry to wrestle with. It'd be interesting to hear what Shirish and RBC think of this, but I think a pragmatic approach as we look ahead over the coming decades.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Yes, I think, can we turn to you, Shirish, and get your input on this too? I mean, it's been an interesting year, as we all say, but there could be further challenges ahead, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with Rob. It's a very fluid situation. I mean, and you're continually making changes to your BCP scenario. I mean, we certainly evolved over the past few months. RBC, like most of the banks, have a secondary site, which is our BCP office, which is like, I think 30, 40 miles, whatever the requirement is, away from the existing site. But in addition to that, to what's just been said, is that sensible to maintain that same level of physical presence in a separate location? We all have kind of seen like the benefit of being socially conscious in the last few months, more so than in the past couple of decades. Do we continue to do that? That still is to be seen. I think there'll always be a level of an external isolated BCP site, and how much of that combination we use to work from home to a separate site, I think still remains to be seen. But at this moment, I don't really feel that you could get away from it completely. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Shirish. I was fiddling around with my screen there. I don't know whether I accidentally popped something up in the middle of Shirish talking, or was it just, I hope it was just on my screen. One of the I think continuing themes of our webinars has been talking about the whole COVID situation, the working from home, the hybrid situation, and what everybody's going on, because clearly, also experiences vary from country to country. I don't really know. I mean, my knowledge is much more on the UK market rather than that. But I don't know how things in the home base of your two banks back in Switzerland and in Canada. Are things vastly different there or not? Rob, perhaps I could ask you first.
In terms of the remote working and how everybody's set up, you mean, Richard? Yeah, it's much the same as it has been for our wider UK team at Pictet. And perhaps Tim's question, perhaps going back to that very quickly, I think the answer actually is it all depends on how best we can service clients. And I think, again, there's an element of collaboration as we think about a return to the office, which is the same for my colleagues in Geneva and Zurich in the HQ, if you like, as it is to our offices across the EU and beyond. There will always be a need for us to collaborate to be effective. If I think about the senior individuals within the organisation, it's how we get things done best by sitting together and exploring options and exploring client solutions and thinking strategically about how clients can be best supported. And I think there will be a need to do that face to face. So is a work from home right forever? No. And I know I'm digressing from your question slightly, but I think that's an important element to the previous question that Tim raised. And I think we'll be able to respond to that across the group internationally, be it from the UK or from Switzerland.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I just on a personal note, I mean, you mentioned about getting back to actually meeting people face to face, and that's something that I'm very much looking forward to as well. I actually got my first lunch invitation yesterday to come into London for lunch in a few weeks' time, and I thought, so maybe things are beginning to turn to a little bit of normality. It's quite good to see. Let me turn to Shirish then and just ask the same question about how things are for RBC outside of the UK.
Yeah, it's kind of like touching on some of the points you mentioned before, that like things in different locations. I mean, RBC having a global presence similar to Pictet, things are very different in different locations. If I just focus on our home base I mean, taking two complete examples, right? Like you look at Canada, where we have a strong presence. They recently went into lockdown last month. They're slowly coming out of it. The vaccination drive has picked up. They're a few steps behind UK in coming back to work, but they're slowly making that progress. With regards to that, in terms of how the employees are going through all the challenges our clients are facing, is very similar to what we just discussed. But then when you look at certain staff we may have in India, it's a completely different scenario. It's a completely different challenge. Obviously, it's been well spoken about and well documented in the news of the hardships those guys are facing. So very, very different across the world, and which is why we have to make decisions at a very regional level. And in certain cases at an employee level of how you get back into work. But at the end of the day, from a client perspective, how best you can get in front of your client, be it over Zoom or be it at lunch or in a conference, whatever that might be, will once again be at an employee and a location level. So it's very different, and how every location is or every country is determining their requirements. It's not just the government guidelines. I keep touching on this point. You do have to offer some level of flexibility to the employee in that sense.
Yes, thanks for that, Shirish. Much appreciated. I'm just going to, we're just coming up close to the 40-minute run, which I always thought was about the optimum time for doing one of these webinars before we lose everybody's interest. What I'd just like to talk about for a moment, if I may, is we're looking at running another webinar in about a month's time. At the moment, we're thinking of doing it on the 17th of June. Prior to that, we want to actually just get some feedback from all of you guys out there. About your thoughts on the whole working from home, working in the office. And I'm going to just hopefully you're going to see, if I press the right button here. So the questions are just going to be along the lines of working from home, working in the office, where are you currently working, which we've already asked you today. Are there plans to change that in the next few months? And if yes, what do you expect the arrangement to be going forward? Because clearly it's going to be different organisation to organisation, person to person, indeed. Do you agree with those changes? I guess not everybody is going to be that happy, perhaps, with some of the things. Some of them people might be very happy. Another big issue is going to be using public transport, particularly for those in and around the London area, probably more than anywhere else. But any major city centre, are you going to be happy using public transport? Will you use alternative arrangements? What changes have been made in the way the office is arranged? In other words, is it geared up for hot desking? Are there going to be screens for safety reasons, more meeting areas, staggered arrival times? Are there further changes you feel are necessary? And also, what do you think the biggest work challenges are going to be for the rest of this year? So we're going to be sending that out probably in the next week or so. So we'd be very interested to get feedback. The last time, or the last two surveys we've done on this topic, we've managed to get responses from literally around the world. It would be quite interesting if we're able to do exactly the same again. Before we close, can I just perhaps come back to our two panelists and see if there's anything further they'd like to add to the conversation today? Rob, let me come to you first.
Thanks, Richard. Nothing particular from me other than to thank you, Fiona, for hosting once again, and thank you to our clients for the very positive results. That's always nice to see, and I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about everybody's mental health as we close today. And I think it's incumbent on all of us, whether we're managers or being managed, to speak openly about this. And hopefully COVID has been a bit of a wake-up call that gives everybody enough comfort to be able to speak about this subject freely, be it at home or at work as well. So that would be perhaps my passing and final comments, and thank you both once again for hosting another successful event.
Yeah, no, well said, Rob. I think that topic of mental health is very much more to the fore than it has been in the past, and rightly so. Shirish, let me come to you and ask you if you would like to make any closing remarks.
Yeah, likewise, not heaps more from me as well. I mean, it's good to see that we've maintained performance year on year across 2020 and 2021, even though the last years we all experienced a lot more transaction volume go through and had a lot more to deliver on. Yeah, the last 12 months, I guess, it has brought about unprecedented suffering across the world and hardships across the world, which has made us all rethink our priorities, not just at a personal but at a professional level. We continue to be
I'm not sure. I think we've lost Shirish there. Yeah, I think the broadband tree has finally fallen on the phone line or something, which I was dreading all the way through this. But yeah, we kind of lost him there. So I think in that case, I shall just like to thank both Rob and Shirish and Fiona for today and for turning up. To all of you who have attended, thank you very much indeed. We do look forward to perhaps seeing you again at, well, you know, metaphorically speaking, at the next event we hold, and we'll be sending out some information for you in due course. But once again, thanks to you all, and cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, everybody.